In today's lesson, we're going to talk about what sets aside the really good sailors from the mediocre sailors, the social sailors, and that is the fundamentals of sailing. Now, on the diagram that I've pre-prepared on the board, the wind is coming from the top, blowing directly down the board. And depending on the type of boat, there are either 4 or 5 fundamentals to sailing. The point of sail, which, as you'll remember from previous lessons, is the angle to the wind, whether you're at close reach, beam reach, broad reach, trailing run, etc. The second one is sail trim, and this has to do with the sail shape. Then we have balance, and balance is the movable weight on the boat left to right or port to starboard. Next we have boat trim, and boat trim is movable weight front to back or bow to stern. And then lastly, for those boats that have a dagger board or a centre board, we have dagger board or centre board. And typically your dinghies and some of your catamarans have the dagger board and centre board, but your monohulls generally don't. Note that a lifting keel does not count as a dagger board or centre board because you wouldn't adjust it mid-sail. Right, so let's look at how these 5 fundamentals or 4 fundamentals, depending on your type of boat, affects your sailing. We're going to look at close hauled, beam reach, and a trailing run, which essentially are the 2 extremes and the midpoint of any sailing. Remember from previous lessons that on a close hauled, we're going to have our sails in quite tight, approaching the middle line, something like that. On a beam reach, our sails are going to be a little bit further out, and on a trailing run, they're going to be approaching 70 to 75 degrees to the center line of the boat. Your foresail will mimic your mainsail. So on a close haul, your foresail will also be quite tight, quite a bit looser on a beam reach, and are quite far, about 70 degrees to the center line of the boat on a trailing run. Now initially when you start sailing, you focus primarily on the position of the sail relative to the boat. But as you improve your sailing, we talk about flattening the sail when we're going upwind and bagging the sail when we're going downwind. And on a beam reach, it's somewhere in between. And the question that a lot of people ask me is, so how do I achieve this? And these are through your control lines. So your Cunningham, your Vang or Kicker, your outhaul, your leech lines, anything that can change the shape of the sail, your traveller, are all used to change the shape, to either flatten the sail or to bag the sail. The next fundamental is balance, and as I said earlier, balance is how you position your movable weight port to starboard. So when we're going upwind, we generally want to move our weight to the windward side, the side closest to where the wind is coming from. So generally it will be somewhere in that plane over there. As we go down to a beam reach, we're going to move that weight further into the boat, possibly about there. And then when we're going downwind, we typically will have that weight more or less in the middle of the boat. Something like that. The next one is boat trim. And boat trim is the position of your movable weight bow to stern. Now, the little dot that you see on my boats is the position of the mast. And I'm going to start off with a beam reach. Typically on a beam reach, you want your weight more or less halfway between the mast and the stern or transom of the boat. So somewhere over there. As we're going upwind, we want to move that weight forward and exaggerate it, but it would be somewhere over there. And when we're going downwind, we want to move that weight backward. So it would be closer to the stern of your boat. Now let me explain balance and boat trim before I move on to dagger board. Remember that the closer we are sailing to the wind, the more heeling moment there is on the boat. The more chance there is that the boat will heel over. If my arm is the mast, you'll often be sailing with the mast angled like that, as opposed to straight up. So by moving your weight to the windward side, you are preventing an excessive heel. And you're able to power up the sail more than you would be able to if you had your weight in the center of the boat, for example. As we go downwind onto a training run, there is considerably less heeling moment, so you try and keep the boat relatively flat. And on a beam reach, we're somewhere in between the two. With boat trim, I'm going to start with downwind. When we're on a training run going downwind, we want to drop the stern or the transom of the boat into the water. If this is the transom and that is the bow, or this is the stern and that is the bow, by dropping the stern into the water, we're raising the bow. So instead of plying through the waves, we are now going to go over the waves. Also, quite often the wind and the water are coming from a similar direction. Please note that this isn't always the case in the ocean. If you're in inland waters, it is always the case, but in the ocean sometimes you'll have wind over water where they are in opposite directions. But quite often they're from a similar direction. And by dropping your stern into the water, you're getting the benefit of the water pushing you along as well as the wind. Now if we look at upwind on a close hold, we want to do the opposite. We want to move our boat, our weight forward so that we drop the bow of the boat into the water and we lift the stern of the boat out of the water. And there are two main reasons for this. The one is leeway. And leeway is the phenomena where a boat doesn't actually travel in a straight line. It doesn't actually sail in the direction it's pointing. It tends to crab. So by dropping our bow into the water, because it's pointy, it minimizes leeway and allows us to track more accurately and also point slightly higher to the wind. The other reason is that if our bow is down and our stern is slightly out of the water on the bottom of the boat leaves the hull smoothly. Whereas if our boat is horizontal to the water actually comes up the stern and then drops down. And this creates drag, putting us backwards. Let's move on to dagger board. And on a dagger board, when we're going upwind, we want maximum dagger board. So we have it all the way down. When we're going on a beam reach, we only need a little bit of dagger board. So we have it 2/3 down. Sorry, my pen is running low. And when we're going downwind, we need very little dagger board. So we only have it 1/3 down. And those of you who are dinghy sailors will be very familiar with this, but it does also apply to bigger boats that have dagger boards or center boards, like your catamaran. Some of your big catamarans have dagger boards. I hope you gained some value out of this lesson. If you have, please remember to click the subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below and I'll be sure to answer.